Good evening, everyone. It is August 31st. Gonna take a look at the battlefield in Ukraine for the first time in a while. Sorry, I've been sick. I also was in DC. All better now. Gonna try to kick out a bunch of videos talking about Ukraine, China, etc. over this weekend. So, obviously, the two storylines here are Kursk, which is ongoing, and the Russian advances from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk. We'll go ahead and get started on Kursk, where the Ukrainians have somewhat slowed their advances in this region. Now they continue to move along the river here, pushing outward. They also continue to expand along their border here. But because of the Russian advances from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk, a lot of the material that was going into this battlefield, into this fight for the Ukrainians, is having to be reallocated to that defense of Pokrovsk. That's a very key city for Ukraine and Russia. I wouldn't say it's like devastating if the Ukrainians lose it, but obviously don't want to lose what it has traditionally been a logistics hub for the Ukrainians. The Russians, nonetheless, are struggling to get across the river. The Ukrainians continue to destroy pontoon bridges. The Ukrainians have created concentric defenses over the last few weeks, which will make it very difficult for the Russians to take anything. They have secured this flank here. The Ukrainians have secured this flank because they're conducting essentially an A2AD campaign in this region here. And A2AD is something that we generally hear when we talk about China in the South China Sea, and it's China's attempt to conduct what's called anti-access area denial, A2AD. Well, Ukraine is trying to deny the Russians access and also deny them the ability to do anything in this area, resupply, refit, support the troops that are still in this region, and they're somewhat successful right now. Ukraine has had to slow the efforts to take this territory, obviously because Russia has taken the opportunity to conduct operations further south in that Avdiivka to Pokrovsk region. But nonetheless, Ukraine has solidified their gains here if we don't see them expand a whole lot in the next few days to weeks because of the prioritization of defending Pokrovsk. So speaking of Pokrovsk, let's go ahead and move downward and to the south where that's taking place. And you can see that Russia has created a pretty significant salient here jetting outward from Donetsk. This fight is being fed by Donetsk, basically, and there is a robust resupply apparatus for Russia right now to be able to move equipment, move personnel into this region. Russia is still losing a significant amount of personnel here, but they are making marginal daily gains, and those gains are eating away at Ukraine's defenses. One concern for Russia is their flanks. Now, this flank here isn't as much of a problem because there isn't a whole lot of road network infrastructure. The Russians secured any kind of lateral movement roads when they took this one near Seladov. So this leaves Ukraine trying to essentially move across open ground for the most part between a river system here and the territory that Russia has already taken. That means that we are likely not going to see any kind of flanking operations here by the Ukrainians, despite it being a ripe opportunity to do so. The Russians' ability to resupply along this route kind of gives them the upper hand here. However, that is not the case when it comes to that northern flank. There are still road networks that Ukraine can use to move material, personnel, and others into this region. There are 3 minor roads that run in this area here, and there's a branching road that comes off here. So there is opportunities for flanks here. I think Russia's aware of that. They are supplying these trenches and defensive lines that they build as they move in as quickly as possible because they know that it is very vulnerable to a Ukrainian attack from the north. Nonetheless, Russia is making marginal gains, and it is taking pressure off of Kursk. So it's a tit for tat at this point. We saw Ukraine conduct operations in Kursk, that incursion into that area to force pressure off of the Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar advances that Russia was making. It worked, but Russia redeployed troops not only to Kursk to try to slow down that operation, but they have bolstered this operation, seeing it as an opportunity to take Pokrovsk. And as I said before, they are making marginal gains. At least at this point, they have punched forward and then moved laterally in this fashion, which does not bode well for Ukraine as the force of Russia continues to bear down. Any kind of flanking maneuvers that Ukraine can do, if they do them, could be effective. But as I said, Russia is building a robust defense because they are seeing the same thing that I am.